Chapter 14. The 12 children making the second lap of the journey were quiet and almost too well behaved. Frances knew they were worried about having to go through the selection process a second time, and she wished it was in her power to ensure that every one of them would find a happy home. She told them stories she invented on the spot. She sang to them made-up riddles, played a form of I Spy with my little eye with the farm animals and objects they could see from the windows, but those who joined in did so half-heartedly. It was obvious their minds were on the coming ordeal. At one point, Frances felt that she was being watched, and she glanced back quickly. Near the back of the car in the aisle, a pair of eyes looked back at her from under a flat, broad-brimmed black hat. The man sat slumped down in his seat, his legs stretched out under the seat in front of him. A tattered Confederate jacket lay across his chest as a blanket and its collar hid the lower part of his face. Seth? Frances looked away. For a moment she felt faint, her hands trembling. Miss Kelly, I'm hungry, Daisy complained. Her voice broke the spell, and Frances pulled herself back to the job at hand. Frances opened the basket and let Aggie pass the food to the children. Frances's mind raced. I'll ignore him. The man couldn't be Seth, or could he? If he is Seth, why is he here? What does he want? Maybe if he is Seth, I can convince him to give himself up. Frances gave a small groan. She couldn't bear not knowing. There's only one thing to do, and that's confront him, she thought. She straightened and took 2 steps down the aisle before she saw the man had left. She looked at the empty seat, looking for Seth's familiar carpet bag, but there was no sign anyone had been there. Pardon me, sir, she said to the gentleman in the high collar and tightly buttoned suit jacket, who was by the window. Could you tell me, please, the name of the gentleman who is sharing the seat with you? The man looked surprised and shrugged. Didn't pay much attention. He got on the train same stop you did, that's all I know. Puzzled, Frances returned to the children. It wasn't likely the man had jumped off the moving train. He probably just moved to another car. It most likely wasn't Seth at all, but just another soldier making his way home. Every few minutes, one of the children would ask, will it be long till we get to Springbrook, or are we almost there now? In a little while, she answered over and over again, just a little while. Finally, it was time to brush her hair and straighten jackets. Belle smiled shyly. Miss Kelly, the ribbon you gave me is lost somewhere. Belle loses everything, Jessie piped up. Do not. Do 2. We have more ribbons, Frances said. She handed one to Belle and retied the drooping bow in Daisy's hair. Frances glanced over at Aggie. Would you like a ribbon, Aggie? I've got a lovely white ribbon that would match the collar of your dress. Aggie shook her head angrily. I don't need a ribbon. Are people going to want me just because I'm wearing a ribbon? Miss Kelly wants your hair to look better, Jessie said, although I don't think anything will help it. Aggie would have fit into Sheriff Malloy's storm prediction. Her eyebrows dipped in a scowl and her cheeks turned red. Frances put an arm around Aggie's shoulders. As she smoothed Aggie's skirt, she skillfully turned her so that her back was to Jessie. You look perfectly lovely, she said. Aggie's anger hadn't abated. People aren't supposed to want to adopt me because of what I'm like on the outside. They're supposed to care about what I'm like on the inside. They're supposed to care about me. Frances looked deeply into Aggie's eyes. You're right. And that's why you're supposed to care about them. Flustered, Aggie took a step backward. The anger disappeared and replaced by confusion. Maybe I've given her a new direction to think about, Frances thought hopefully. The conductor strode through the car. Springbrook. Next stop, Springbrook. 5 minutes. Frances was sure that their baggage was piled by the door, and as soon as the train stopped, she led the children to the platform. As before, a number of people were clustered on the platform waiting for them to arrive. A tall, thin woman stepped forward and thrust out her hand. Miss Kelly, I'm Isabel Domain, chairman of the placing out committee, she said. The train will be here in Springbrook for half an hour, so we'll do the choosing right here, now on the platform, and get the waifs no one wants back on board. The waifs no one wants. Frances winced at Miss Domain's words and the hardness of her voice. Before she could speak, Mrs. Domain said, that is, we can vouch for everyone who came to see the children. Taken back by Mrs. Domain's rushed manner, Frances said, the children and the potential foster parents must have time to get to know one another. Huh, Miss Domain said. The longer things take, the less gets done. Line up the children, please. Introduce them. We'd better get started. Frances, realizing she had no other choice, took the children by their hands and placed them with their backs to the train, facing the adults who had gathered. Smiling, she rested her hands on the shoulders of George and Earl Babcock. George and Earl Babcock are brothers. They very much want to be placed together. She moved to Harry and his little brother Adam and wrapped her arms around Harry's waist and clung to him in terror. Harry and Adam are brothers, too, and they're hoping for a family and will take both of them. She introduced Belle, Daisy, Lucy, Aggie, and Jessie, Jack, Eddie, and Shane, and once again, although Miss Domain fussed impatiently, Frances gave her short speech about the Children's Aid Society and what the foster parents must promise to do in raising the children. Frances stood back, allowing the adults to talk with the children. In a shade of the one side of the depot, she caught a glimpse of the man she had seen on the train. This time his hat was pulled low over his face. His shade his eyes from the sun. It wasn't possible to see his face. He was watching her, Frances knew. Why? He couldn't be Seth. He was too short, wasn't he? Or did the distance create that illusion? He's not Seth, she told herself firmly. Eddie stood nearby. He picked up 3 stones and was unsuccessfully trying to juggle them and smiled at the people around him at the same time. Learned to juggle in the streets of New York, I did, Eddie said. Maybe you'd like to hear me whistle a cheery tune while I juggle. A woman who'd stopped to watch him turned to her husband. Fred, this one's a little smart, Alec. Let's talk to that boy over there. Eddie dropped the stones and he picked them up. Frances said in his low voice, Eddie, take a look at the man leaning against the depot. Eddie straightened and stepped back to look. What man? She asked. Frances stared at the building. The man who had looked at Seth was now outside the door to the depot where Frances could have a closer look. He definitely wasn't Seth. Never mind, Frances told Eddie. I made a mistake. Ready to tend to business, she turned back to the people who had stopped to talk to the children. A man and woman came to Frances, leading George and Earl Bobcott by the hands. The boys said they'd like to come with us, the man said, introducing himself and his wife. They've got 4 dogs, Earl exclaimed, and one of them had just had pups. And they said one of the pups could be mine. There'll be a pup for each of you, the woman said, beaming. They're fine boys, she told Frances. Yes, they are, Frances agreed. She could see the depths of sorrow in George's eyes. As the eldest brother, he had tried to keep his family together. He'd have his brother with him, but he'd always dreamed that his little sister, he'd always dream of the little sister he might never see again. Jack Greer went to the young couple, who smiled readily and often, and Daisy Gordon agreed to go with a stout middle-aged couple, who told her a happy child brightened a lonely house. Frances felt at ease about the placements, but she was concerned about the man who had asked for Lucy Griggs. Quiet and solemn-faced, he seemed to be as shy as Lucy. Without introducing himself, he blurted out to Lucy, "My wife sent me to bring home a girl to be a companion to our own little girl. Would you like to come with me?" Frances asked, "Where is your wife? I'd like to meet her, Mr. Snapes. Wilbur Snapes." Mabel couldn't come. She had to stay home to take care of the child. "I'm not sure that," Frances began, but Lucy, clutching her doll, burst into the conversation. "They have a little girl. I'd have a sister. This is what I wanted right from the beginning." She looked at Mr. Snapes. "What's her name?" "Emma," he whispered. "Emma, what a lovely name." Mrs. Domain stepped up and nodded to Mr. Snapes. "Morning, Wilbur," she said before she turned to Frances. "Snapes are good-hearted people. I recommend them." "We usually meet both prospective parents," Frances said, but Mrs. Domain shook her head. "Poor Mabel doesn't get out much. What with Emma to care for? She's a fine, upstanding woman. Did I mention Wilbur's a deacon in our church?" Frances took Lucy aside. "Are you sure you want to leave with the Snapeses?" she said. "You have a choice." Lucy's eyes sparkled. "I choose yes, Miss Kelly. I'm going to have a little sister. I'll share my doll with Emma. Maybe she'll have a doll, too. Maybe Emma will sit on my lap, and I can rock her." Frances smiled at Lucy. "All right, then. I'll give Mr. Snapes the papers to sign." Sudden loud noises nearby called Frances to whirl around. Aggie was glowering at a woman who stood before her. "Open your mouth, child. Let's have a look at your teeth," the woman ordered. "No, I'm not a horse," Aggie snapped. The woman's husband scowled at Aggie and took a step toward her. "There's no talk like that," he growled. Aggie looked frightened. She spoke up. "Don't you dare hit me, or I'll yell and scream and hit you back." Frances hurried to Aggie's side and put a protective arm around her shoulders. "There seems to be a problem here," Frances said, but the woman drew her shawl around her shoulders and stomped off in a huff. "I don't want the likes of that young savage," her husband said as he followed her. "I'm not a young savage," Aggie murmured to Frances. "I'm a person. I'm Aggie, and all I want is to be part of a family until—" "What do you mean by until?" Frances asked. Maggie's voice was barely whispered. "My mother left me on the steps of the hospital when I was born," defiantly she had. "She had to. She didn't want to leave me." "Of course she didn't," Frances said. She held Aggie's hand. "She wrote a note. She pinned it to my blanket, and I have it. I found it on my file in Miss Marklander's office, and I took it because it belongs to me, not her. My mother wrote that she was in temporary distress. Those were the exact words. She wrote that she would come back for me someday." "Oh, Aggie, love," Frances said, aching for her. It's been 12 years, Aggie said, "so I don't think she will." Quickly she corrected herself. "Or can. That's it. She probably can't come. But she loved me, so maybe. My mother loved me, and somebody else will, won't they?" "Of course they will," Frances said. She spoke to 3 or 4 young couples praising Aggie, but all shook their heads and drifted away. Belle Dancing found a home with a kind, smiling people, and Frances rejoiced. The little girl who had known nothing but life in an orphanage would now have parents and love she needed so badly. Shane Prescott was chosen by people Frances liked immediately. Mrs. Domain gave them high praise, but soon the people who had come to see the children just out of curiosity drifted away. There were only a few couples left on the platform, not nearly enough for the children who hadn't been chosen. Frances looked at the worried young faces and felt heartsick. Mrs. Domain pointedly looked at her watch and announced, "It's a few minutes early, Miss Kelly, but you might as well get the rest of the waifs back on the train." A young woman bustled up to Frances, a disappointed look on her face. "I'm Annette Sebring," she said. "My husband and I have a farm not far from here. We've been married 4 years. We're doing well, but not well enough to support more than one child." She stopped as though waiting for Frances to speak, but Frances was puzzled. "We have a number of children here who haven't been chosen yet," she said. "Oh, I know," Mrs. Sebring said. "I guess I'm so concerned with my problem that I didn't make myself clear. There's a darling little boy over there named Adam Stowe. My husband and I have our hearts set on him, but he said he can't leave his brother. My husband and I talked it over, and we don't see how we can manage to support more than one child." Frances's heart ached. "Adam and Harry are very close. They've been terribly afraid they'd be separated." "But you do separate children and families, don't you?" Mrs. Sebring pleaded. "We want Adam. We'll love him with all our hearts." "I'll talk to the boys," Frances told her. "Make it quick," Mrs. Domain said. "The train will leave in 5 minutes." Frances knelt in front of Adam and looked at his tear-stained face in her hands. "Adam, love, Mr. and Mrs. Sebring want you very much. They'd be good parents to you." "No," Adam insisted. "I have to stay with Harry." Frances looked at Harry. "You understand, don't you? There's just one more stop. It's going to be very hard, if not impossible, to place you 2 together." Harry nodded. His face was white with fear. Frances could see the struggle within him as he said, "Adam, you have to go." "No."
They're nice people, I can tell. They'll be a real mother and father again. I want our own mother and father. You can't. They died. You know that, Harry said. Adam buried his head against Harry's chest and sobbed. Harry didn't answer. Adam buried his head against Harry's chest and sobbed. Harry didn't waver. You've always done everything I told you to, right? As Adam nodded, Harry went on. I want you to go with the Sebrings. You'll be happy with them. Adam looked up. I'll never see you again. Yes, you will. We'll write to each other maybe when we're bigger. I can't write. You'll go to school and learn how. Just remember, someday I'll come and see you, I promise. Mrs. Domain leaned out the open window of the railway car and shouted, Miss Kelly, I put the children on board. You only have a few minutes left. Frances stood and held out her hands to Adam and Harry. Adam, we have to get your paper signed. Harry, kid, quick goodbye to your brother. Hop aboard the train. It was just a few minutes to get the Sebring signatures. Frances hadn't realized she'd been crying too until Miss Sebring handed her a small lace-trimmed handkerchief. Thank you. Thank you, thank you for our boy, Mrs. Sebring whispered. We'll make him happy. With the help of the conductor, just held out a hand, Frances boarded the train just as it began to move. Quickly she wiped her eyes. Only 4 children were left in her care. Harry Stowe, Jessie Lester, Aggie Vaughn, and Eddie Marsh. They sat quietly, wrapped in their own blankets of misery and self-doubt. Reddened eyes, streaked faces showed that they'd been crying, except for Aggie, who sat stubbornly, her lower lip pushed out and her arms folded tightly against her chest. Aggie had told Frances, I never cry, and Frances wished she could say, go ahead and cry, let all the unhappiness out, but she knew that headstrong Aggie wouldn't listen. Eddie's laugh was wobbly as said, guess there's not much interest out here in the West for a lad from the big city. The right person will come along, Frances said. It's going to be someone who will really appreciate your fine qualities. What fine qualities? Jessie asked. I heard someone say Eddie was a smart aleck. I just tried to make people laugh, Eddie explained. Frances patted his hand and smiled. I liked your juggling act, she said. Aggie slumped in her seat, her arms folded tightly across her chest, her face a small thundercloud. I am not going back to Miss Marchlander, she muttered. Of course you're not, Frances said. I'm sure there's someone in Woodridge who will choose you and love you. You can't really know for sure, Jessie said. You're just guessing. Aggie scowled at Jessie and turned to Frances. I'm not going back. I'll run away first. I'll find a home for you, for all of you, Frances promised. She sighed. From the glum expressions on Aggie and Jessie's face, it was obvious that she hadn't been able to influence either of them. She hadn't been able to influence Seth. And Johnny? Would she be a failure with Johnny, too?